Right, morning. Welcome all. Yeah, special welcome back to Ed, who's come back damp and soggy from the moors, but otherwise seems to be in good spirits. So yeah, welcome back. So the topic this morning is, what do people want? Some of us clearly want to go tramping around in the mists and the bog, but Trevor just wants to sunbathe. So I think two very different approaches to what people want there. So, Lee, you look like you're wobbling around on your cell phone this morning. She's struggling. All right, good. Okay, so Trevor, let's start off with you this morning. What do people want?
Oh, well, I think it's a very interesting question, especially in terms of the topic business fundamentals. And I recall many years back an individual by the name of Paul Pilzer. I actually remember being over in the States, and I saw a book come out. This was in the late 80s. It was a book by Anthony Robbins, Unlimited Power, I think it was. And it was a very interesting book, or Awaken the Giant Within. This is when Anthony Robbins was, he had just come out of his own problems. He must have been a youngster, maybe in his early 20s, and he decided to write these books. But what fascinated me in the book is that I went to go and have a look at the individuals that inspired him. And Paul Pilzer was one of them. He happened to be a young senator in the United States. So I went to go and have a look at what Paul Pilzer had to say at the time. And there was one statement that he made, which was completely different to any statement that I had heard in business at the time. Most people were turning around and saying, you know what you've got to go and do is find out what the consumers want. And then you develop a product for them. And that tended to be the way that corporates would operate. They would set up focus groups. They would bring people in and they'd say, okay, have a look at it. These are a couple of ideas. Do you like the taste of this? Do you like the look of that? And then that's how they would construct a product. This guy came out and said, you know what, the world is changing. This was in the later 80s. And he turned around and said, it's no longer just about finding out what people actually want and then create it. He says this world is now going into a time period where you imagine a need and you create it. So he was basically saying is that people need to change their thinking and do not be shy to actually come up with something unique. So he was talking innovation and he was talking about how to take it to marketplace. And I think he was one of the first. He actually developed his invention that he actually came up with was CD-ROMs, educational CD-ROMs that Bill Gates actually fell in love with. And he developed this whole educational library on CD-ROMs that no one else had actually come up with at the time at the scale that he was actually doing. Now, what was fascinating for me was to actually follow through how quickly these new concepts actually become outdated, because you can imagine about 5-6 years later, when the internet was born, the end of CD-ROMs as an educational tool were almost spelt, and it took another 10 years, and you really, every bit of information is now available on Google, etc., which is what started happening in the mid-2000s. And then we got onto smartphones and all those sort of things. So from a point of view of what is it that people want, I think there's a balance. Go out, find out what it is that people want, but also do not forget that innovators actually identify what it is that people want before they even know what they want, and they commit and make things happen. So that's my input from a business fundamentals to get the discussion going.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, and I'll just quickly looked up Paul Pulser there and popped some details into the chat box.
Great.
So yeah, interesting fellow. Right. So Lee, you wobbled into the discussion this morning. You're having some tech issues, are you?
Yeah, couldn't get into my laptop, so phone had to do, you know, could always make a plan. That's fine. Sorry, so I ended up being a bit late. Yeah, welcome back, Edward. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to say hi. I look forward to hearing all about Dartmoor, and but we being all very serious and talking about what people want. So, in terms of business, and I definitely think, if you are the entrepreneur like Trevor that is on the cutting edge, and you think, you know, we've got all the examples you can think about Amazon, who is, you know, sort of at the edge and inventing things that people didn't even realize they wanted. You know, all those examples. But I think for us lesser mortals, us lesser mortals, we actually have to, it's a combination of understanding what people want, getting to know what people want, because we are limited by our own assumptions. We think we can only look at the world through our own eyes. And unless we step out of our own context, our own understanding, and start to look at the world through other people's eyes, and if I'm in a business context, we would say like your target market or the ideal customer, what is it that they really want? You can't guess. And the more I'm working with market research, the more I'm realizing that suppliers, people who are providing products, have the worst assumptions about their clients, and they put them in boxes. And it isn't until they step out and actually ask questions and actually engage and look at people's lives and connect with them on a personal basis that they realize that, oh, you know, what I thought was going to be important for them is completely different. You know, I look at a simple example like bread. You think bread is a staple. Everybody is always going to buy bread. It's just, that's what you do. You go to the shops, you get your egg, milk, and bread. That's, but yes, my language is going eggs, milk, and bread. But in today's time, where money is very short, and you've got to count your pennies, if I've got to feed my family, am I going to spend money on what is going to fill the tummies of my family more? Porridge or bread? If that's I've got a choice. So you've got to, there's all kinds of things that are changing that we need to reevaluate in terms of what people want. So that's the one thing you need to ask the people, not ask them what they want, but you've got to actually figure out what's happening in their lives to give them what they want. And then the second thing is that I'm losing my train of thought. The second thing is that you also have to have some options, because it's, as much as people can tell you what they want or what they need, the reality is they don't always know what they want. There's a great line in a movie. Oh, to Edward, back to movie references. You'll hate us. But there's a great line in a movie, a romance movie. I can't remember the name of it. And the one of the sort of the best friend character guy turns to his best friend girl and says, "You've got to tell me this. I've been dying to ask you this for years. What do women want?" And she says, "I am going to tell you a secret that you are not allowed to tell a soul. Only you and I know this. I will tell you because you're my best friend, but that's it. We don't know. And he said, I thought so all along. And we hate to admit it, but we don't know what we want. If you give it to us, we'll tell you that's what we want. But figuring it out. So you've got to also, and I find that when I'm selling into corporate environments, selling training, I can give you exactly what you want. Tell me what you want. I've got mountains of material. We can give you exactly what you need. And the question always to me is, but what do you have? And I always thought that that was like a trick question to me to see, oh, well, what really do you have? What they really mean is we don't know what we want. And so there is this push and pull between having options that people can choose from, because people want choice. They just don't always know what to come up with. But at the same time, you do have to understand where people are. And that's also where going with the flow, going where there is actually traffic, is also not a bad place to start when you're starting a business. So that's my input for today, as garbled as it was.
Well, good. Thanks, Lee. Yeah. So Ed, I know you don't want eggs and butter, but maybe you'll have some bread, I suppose. But let's find out. Do you know what people want, especially the ladies?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually when Lee was talking about food and mixing her words up, because I now see her in a totally new light as a tasty morsel. But there you go. Yeah, well, when I got back home last night, I knew exactly what I wanted. I wanted a shower and I wanted a couple of beers. Simple life. And then when I was on the moor, it became very clear to me that really life is very simple, and what you need is just shelter and food. And then you can appreciate everything else. And with all the clutter gone, with no text, no emails, no social media, none of that, I could just appreciate nature and look at the flowers and look at the animals and look at the insects and the frogs and the newts and all that sort of stuff, and the views and the sunsets and the sunrises. And I didn't want for much else. And as you know, it was my birthday at the weekend. And all I wanted to do was meet up with my two girls and have some food. And that's what we did. Happiest man alive. And before I left, I kind of agreed with Trevor, which was kind of weird. And then this morning, I'm going to agree with Trevor as well, because I think what we want is what we're told we want by businesses and governments. And I use it as an example. After the war in America, they wanted to support the farmers who were growing loads of grain and stuff. And so they came up with this thing called high fructose corn syrup, which is a staple in most of the foods, which led to the obesity crisis. We want to keep businesses going, so we make stuff and we tell people they need stuff and they buy stuff. They have these little nodding dogs in the back of their car. They have all these little bits and pieces they don't need, and they just buy stuff. The trouble is, as we're doing that, we're trashing the planet. We're using up too many resources. We're throwing stuff in the ocean. Interesting enough, I met a sailor, as you do, from ages ago, and he was telling me maybe 20, 30 years ago, when he was sailing the high seas, they were sailing through those big plastic patches in the ocean where all the, so for years we've been trashing the planet by all this rubbish that we've been told we need, we then throw away, and it's polluting the oceans. And we're reaching a point where what we need is to stop buying, stop producing, stop throwing away, and care about where we live, because there's only so much time that you can spend throwing stuff away that's not near you. Eventually, it's going to come back and bite you. So what we need, or what people want, is not what they need. It's what they're told they want. And what people want to do is to wake up, smell the coffee, and realize they're trashing the planet. And we've got to reinvent how business works. So we perhaps refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and make a whole new business model which isn't predicated on making people want stuff they don't need. And yeah, it's nice to have luxury things. You know, the present I most wanted for my birthday was a pizza cutting wheel, because I haven't got one. And my daughter bought me this lovely pizza cutting wheel. Now, I don't need it. I've been cutting my pizza with a knife for ages, but that's a little bit of luxury, a little pizza wheel. So I think we need luxuries to make us feel good. So yes, there's a place for people coming up with iPhones, coming up with bits and pieces to make life better. But I think we do need to sort of stop inventing stuff for people to buy and find some other way of doing business that's consistent with not trashing the planet. So that's my eco ramble from the moors.
Great, thanks, Ed. Yeah, I'm not too sure that people need iPhones, but yeah, that's another topic probably altogether. Yeah. So yeah, it is. I mean, it is that conundrum, isn't it, between need and want. But anyway, let's hear from a youngster, Tabiso. What do you think people need?
Steve Jobs once said that the customer doesn't know what he or she wants until you show it to him, you know? And his point was that you must create a need and simultaneously fill it, you know? The sentiment that no one really knows anything has been around for quite a while, you know? And Nassim Taleb explores this thoroughly on his book, The Black Swan. I highly recommend, you know? The book is about unpredictability, once-off events, and biases. The internet, for example, is an example of a black hole, you know, because no one predicted it prior to the 20th century, you know, and of course the pandemic, which is another black swan, because nothing like this has ever happened before, and really knows how to react or what to do. You know, I think that if you had asked people in Henry Ford's time what they wanted, he would have replied a faster horse. You know, and I think that's funny because, you know, yes, people don't really know what they want. You have to show them innovation. Because now we have a faster horse that won't die if you leave it in the cold at night. I think that's so great, you know. I think that to know what you want, you know, and personally I want is a great product or service that will actually serve my needs, you know. I want great customer service. I want ease of use, and I want convenience. I want service. I want care and respect. For us, I disagree with Steve Jobs just a bit, you know, because I think that if you can fill those needs, you know, that I just now that I'm a customer, you know, so I happen to know what I want so much, Mr. Jobs. I hope it's actually the last time that I'm actually at odds with Steve Jobs, you know, but you know, you can't be right every time. A big innovation might make your offering popular, of course, you know, but I think that if you have the fundamentals right, if you can do the fundamentals right, you know, you'll do well in business, you know. I think that it doesn't require market research. If you can treat people right, there will be a customer, you know. I think that, yes, of as a person, I am governed by biases and they dictate my life. But human nature still rules, you know. I think that if you can understand people's motivations, that is, people are narcissists and they think that the world revolves around them, that you'll do well in business, you know. I think that you have to cater to the narcissist in the best possible way. This is a psychological urge everyone yearns for, you know. Just make me feel good. Just make me feel special. That's all I want. We feel good, you know. And I think that's what people want, to have a feeling good moment, you know. Make me feel special. Um, make the world revolve around me, you know. And I think that that's everything, you know, when it comes to business and how you go about creating and actually retaining them. So I think that's just my contribution on today's topic. So thank you, Ivan.
Thanks, Tabisa. Yeah, I think you've identified exactly what all the marketing and social media drives have been doing for the last couple of years, becoming me-centric, and telling people that's what they should be. They should be me-centric, which of course Ed hates, because it's not about being me-centric, is it, Ed? At all. Yeah. So, and I think that comes back to what is mentioned, by Tabisa and everyone else is by and large people are in the mode of being told what they want and being told what they need and being told what is good for them or what is bad for them, and they're not thinking. They're simply not thinking for themselves. They're just absorbing these messages that are coming at them from all directions. These days, as I say, whether it's from social media or news media or television channels or whatever it is, these subliminal messages are always there. It's about you. Become the best you can be. And what do you want? What do you? And I think it's a real challenge. I mean, we spoke on one of our other sessions during the week about how do you change a system? How do you change the world? And that is the challenge that we sit with right now, both from a social and a business perspective, I think. Starting to get different messages coming out that are less me-centric and more more inclusive, I think, because certainly my perception is that the way marketing is driving a very large percentage of the population was echoed in some of Tabiso's words there. Make me feel good, make me feel happy, make me feel comfortable, make me feel well served. So can you use those messages to start doing some of the things that Ed was talking about? Can you take that whole me thing and turn it on its head, rather than being a selfish me, being a concerned and what's the word I'm looking for? A community me. So how do you actually say, well, for me to have what I want, to be comfortable, to be satisfied, I need to be part of a whole rather than an element in isolation outside of the whole, which, as I said, my perception is that's where the primary marketing messages across the globe are driving at this point in time. Trying to emphasize the uniqueness of me as an individual, whereas me as an individual cannot survive on my own. I simply can't. None of us can. So if my focus is completely self-centered and selfish, the system will break eventually and break down. So yeah, I think it's an interesting. I think it's a very interesting challenge. I think there are movements and there are people who are trying to drive a different message across. And some of those messages are taking root, but perhaps there's an opportunity for us to actually think about how we flip that me message, and make it an inclusive me rather than an exclusive me. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on the topic. And Ed, you weren't on one of our chats this last week. I don't know why. You were being selfish and niche and just being out in the moors or something. But no, I think I'm very envious. I would have loved to do exactly what you've done. It sounds stunning. And of course, reduce your footprint and in the process. But I came across a very interesting network called the Water Bear Network. And if you haven't hopped onto it, get onto the Water Bear network. It's very interesting. It's free, and they've got some great content about the environment and the opportunities and the challenges and us. Yes, Trevor.
Right, sorry, I've got outside influences here. I don't know if you can hear the dogs barking, but that's my cross I have to bear, looking after my daughter's dogs while she's in France having a ball. Listen, I made a couple of notes there. Number one, when I turned around and said that's called luxury, Ed, I was talking about you being able to sit and camp in the moors and live a life of simplicity. That is absolute luxury. I think the whole world is flipped. But as Lee was talking and as Ed was talking, I made a couple of notes here. And something stimulated me that people actually want what other people are raving about. That there's something in this world, and if you think through it from a business fundamentals point of view, it seems to me that people want what other people have. So that if you start thinking about it, this grass is always greener on the other side, or the fear of not having, or the fear of someone else having more or better than what I've got, is actually a really good driver to work on around in terms of marketing and business fundamentals, or thinking about how am I going to market what my business is about. And then I thought, you know what? This blooming section here has made me rethink how I've got to view what we're doing currently in business at the moment. And I think just listening to everyone, there are so many different wants and needs today. And if you think about it, there are plus minus 8 billion odd people on this planet. There's more than enough consumers out there for us to actually go out and test all sorts of different concepts. So I think consumers are spoiled for choice, and new business operators are spoiled for choice in what it is they can do. You can either go out there and create, imagine a need and create it, or you can go out there and do a market research focus group. The trick really is just get off your backside and go out there and do something. I think that's the real starting point, and then find out whether there's a market for you to actually promote whatever your business is that you want to get in, or it's not, and quickly start thinking about switching directions or switching the way that you actually present your product, or whatever it is that you're looking to get out to market to generate revenue for yourself in business. Anyway, those are some thoughts I just had as everyone was talking.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Thanks, everyone. So that does bring us to the bottom of the hour. So, need a topic for tomorrow morning? Anyone got a topic for tomorrow morning?
Yeah, I'd like to offer something to follow on from today into next week in terms of business fundamentals, and to ask the question, also a business fundamentals question, but I think it's connected to this: what do people want? Is what problem are you solving? I don't think it's the only question that you need to ask in terms of what it is your business is about, but I definitely think it's a helpful starting point. So what problem are you solving? And it was interesting for me, Edward, yesterday in Wisdom's Chat, we spoke about cryptocurrencies and digital, tokens and those kinds of things. And I read the article that Trevor pointed out on Kevin Shu. That's where it was came from. And he was a gamer who then he's now owns an esports league and has created a game. But one of his businesses is a cryptocurrency game. I'm going into the topic, which I should wait for next week. But I just wanted to introduce. So he built that cryptocurrency organization or business because gamers were being defrauded on eBay of what they would buy a sword for their game and then wouldn't receive it. So, oh, sorry, don't have it. Whereas cryptocurrency is a safer way of building those things. Anyway, so it's solving a problem. So let's talk about solving a problem next week. And then tomorrow, I would really love to hear more from Edward about his time away. I think I'm wanting to live vicariously by living on the moors. So, and all of us, I think, are there. So that's the luxury. So, but let's frame it as, how do you live a simple life? That's what I have the question. How do you live a simple life? So I'm wondering if we can talk about that tomorrow.
Great, thanks, Lee. So yeah, let's live the simple life, but then complicate it again next Thursday by solving problems. But anyway, have a good one, and we will talk things simple but luxurious perhaps tomorrow morning. So we'll see you then. Go well. Cheers.
See you tomorrow.